Hello, today's lesson will be in the park. Some words to start with. The first one is path. Path. You might see a path going through a park. Grass. Grass. Flowers. Flowers. Bin. Bin. Trees. Trees. Playground. Playground. Fountain. Fountain. And litter. Litter. Okay, so these are all things that you would find in a park. And today we're going to look at things you should and shouldn't do in the park. So we're going to look at modal verbs. Modal verbs include can, must, may, might, will, would, should. We use them with other words to express ability, so can, obligation, must, possibility, might or will, and so on. So we use them together with basic verbs to express different things. Today we're going to focus on the modal verb must. So we use this to express obligation, things we have to do, must. So we often use must to say something that is essential or necessary. For example, I must go. I must go. I have to go. So must, we call it an auxiliary verb. And we use it before the main verb. So the structure is subject, so I, he, she, we, they, it. Subject, must, then the main verb. So I must go. The main verb is the base verb, the infinitive form of the verb without the to. So to go, go. We just use go. I must go. So let's have a look at some examples here. In the table we've got subject, auxiliary, main verb. So the first one is I must go home. You must visit us. We must stop now. So again, subject, must, main verb. Like all auxiliary verbs, must cannot be followed by to. So we say, I must go now, not I must to go now. Okay, we take out the to. I must go now. We can use must to talk about the present or the future. look at these examples. I must go now is present. I must call my mother tomorrow, future. We cannot use must to talk about the past. We use have to. So in past tense, I had to go. I had to go, not I must. We can only use I must for the present and the future. So must is the affirmative. You must do something. And then we have must not, the negative. So must not, we contract it, becomes mustn't. Mustn't. So these are things that we prohibit. So rather than things that we have to do, these are things we can't do. Mustn't. We use must not to say something is not permitted or allowed. For example, passengers must not talk to the driver. Passengers must not talk to the driver. The structure is the same as with must. It's an auxiliary verb. So again, subject, I, you, we, they, he, she, it, must not or mustn't, and then the main verb without the to. So subject, auxiliary, in this case must not, and main verb. And we often contract must not to mustn't. So you mustn't go. At some examples. So I mustn't forget my keys. You mustn't disturb him. We mustn't be late. We mustn't be late. Again, must cannot be followed by to, so we say you mustn't arrive late, not you mustn't to arrive late. So no to. Okay, so again we can use must not to talk about the present or the future. Visitors must not smoke, present. I mustn't forget Tara's birthday. So we're talking about the future. Again, we can't use mustn't to talk about the past. We use other structures. For example, we were not allowed to enter. Or I couldn't park outside the shop. So must and must not only for the present and the future. Okay, so that's how to use must and mustn't. And now let's look at some examples referring back to today's theme, in the park. So the park is a public place, so there are often rules and regulations that you must follow. So let's have a look at some examples. You mustn't walk your dog here. You mustn't walk your dog here. Number 2. You must put litter in the bin. You must put litter in the bin. Number 3. You mustn't take photos here. You mustn't take photos here. You must be quiet. You must be quiet. You mustn't eat here. You mustn't eat here. You must wash your hands. You must wash your hands. You must turn off your mobile. You must turn off your mobile. You mustn't swim here. You mustn't swim here. Okay, so there's some examples. You might see them in your local park with a sign, like you've just seen on the slides there. Something you must do, maybe in a red circle, something you mustn't, with a line through it. You mustn't do it. Let's do an activity together. Number 1.